I discovered Sadako at the end of the world one day while browsing Reddit and knew instantly that I had to read it as soon as possible. A light-hearted version of a classic Japanese horror story? Hell yeah! Wholesome parodies of horror properties are quite rare. In fact, the only example I can think of off the top of my head is Masahiro Ito's chibi drawings of various Silent Hill monsters, which are only really doodles and aren't official Silent Hill media at all. Upon discovery of this manga, I wondered what situations I would see one of the most feared horror icons in, or if she'd even be that involved in the story at all, taking up a more infrequent appearance role that she had in the movies. Now, before I get into the story and spoilers, I do highly recommend this manga for both fans of horror and fans of slice of life who can handle light horror elements. I also think it's a must read for fans of the Ring franchise, as it manages to present a wholesome take on the much loved J-horror story while maintaining the darkness the franchise is known for. It's very much a contained story at just a single volume and can be read in roughly an hour, so if you're interested in reading it, you can save the rest of this video for after you're finished. I started reading, and even within the first few pages, I'd fallen in love with this story's premise. Although it follows the same basic layout as every other Sadako related piece of media, this one puts a fun twist on it, being that Sadako is less sadistic and more moe. Moeko? Anyway. The story begins with two girls, one in her mid-teens, Ai-chan, and the other barely out of her toddler stage, Hii-chan, who live in a post-apocalyptic Japan where the existence of any other survivors grows increasingly uncertain. Ai repairs a VCR, which enables them to play the many VHS tapes that they've gathered, the first of which, unfortunately, is Sadako's cursed tape. Since they have little to no knowledge of the pre-apocalypse world, they have no idea that the woman crawling out of their TV towards them isn't actually a normal occurrence. They hilariously assume that that's just how videotapes function, and so begin to interact with the entity that stands before them as if she were a regular person. In fact, they're delighted to encounter someone else in such a barren world. Sadako herself seems a lot more chill than her previous incarnations and goes along with their antics somewhat passively, even acting awkward and bashful in many instances. She's so moe and I fucking love it. During their introductions, in which Sadako picks up a tablet and manipulates it using techno-magic to convey messages instead of speaking, it's subtly revealed that Sadako will only be with them for 7 days. Now, anyone who's familiar with the Ring franchise knows exactly what happens at the end of this time frame, but here the girls interpret it as Sadako visiting them for 7 days and wanting to make the most of their time together. We actually get Sadako's inner dialogue throughout the story instead of anyone else's, and it's really cool to see the world from her perspective. Ai-chan's goal is to find more survivors so that she can show more people Sadako's tape, which just so happens to align with Sadako's goal of cursing everyone, so the group set off in search for more friends. They soon encounter a man who works as a beautician, although he hasn't had any customers in a while, for obvious reasons. At first, Sadako perceives him as a threat to the girls and attacks him. She either does this because she's grown fond of the girls in their brief time together, or that she intends to be the cause of their demise herself, the latter of which is most likely. The tension is diffused when the man, Yamane-san, embarrasses Sadako by pointing out that she doesn't keep good care of her hair. Yamane, being a beautician, vows to give her a makeover and fix her unkempt hair. The following sequence is pretty hilarious, and the reveal of Sadako's slick, pampered, beautified hair is a pretty funny visual. During this makeover, Ai-chan reveals that Sadako came from a videotape, and Yamane seems to vaguely recall the urban myth but quickly dismisses it. He proposes that meeting Sadako is the equivalent of watching her video, which she likes the sound of, but it was probably his way of trying to get out of watching it. As the three girls depart from Yamane to continue their adventure, Sadako slips silently back to Yamane and kills him out of the view of the children. Before he dies, he thanks Sadako for allowing him to experience the joy from his work once again, which was pretty touching. They soon come across another person in their journey, an old woman, who invites the trio in for dinner. During their meal, Ai-chan accidentally lets slip that they've been surviving off a secret food stock that their father had left them, the reveal of which would usually be dangerous in a post-apocalypse, but the granny shows how kind she is by focusing more on the fact that their father is no longer with them. She seems very warm and motherly, and it's funny to see her and Sadako interact. It appears that the granny was waiting for her daughter to return to her, but it's most likely that she too has died. The group spent some time playing around and performing a play after finding out the granny used to be an actress, and Sadako again finds an adorable use for her techno-magic by powering a projector to create backgrounds for the play. As the young girls depart from the granny, she gives them lots of supplies for their travels. She even gives Sadako a pair of shoes to cover her dirty, bare feet and tells her to be good to the girls, probably sensing something more sinister in her. The three girls set off again, and this time it's unclear as to whether or not Sadako kills the granny, but what is certain is that she closes the curtain in front of the granny so that the girls wouldn't see her. I believe it was an act of kindness on Sadako's behalf, warped as it may be. The next stop is a well, which they had been discussing while walking. As it turns out, this well is also haunted even though it isn't Sadako's. The spirit is that of a beautiful maiden called Okiku who died long ago. Okiku slyly reveals that Sadako is also a spirit, which surprises Ai and Hichan. Okiku shares her backstory of being the ghost of Plate Manor, which is apparently based on a true story, and Ai gives her a plate for which she was searching for. Before Okiku ascends to heaven having completed her dying wish, she warns Ai that staying with Sadako will mean her death. The girls take shelter in a cave for the night, and Ai-chan seems a little shaken by Okiku's warning. However, she tells Sadako that she still wants to spend more time with her and get to know her better. The next day they arrive at Sadako's well, and after inspecting it, Ai declares that they've reached their goal and that the journey is now over, so they spend the rest of the day playing. This is also, might I add, the final of those fateful 7 days. Throughout this day we see Sadako reflecting on the situation and seemingly regretting cursing the girls. At the end of the day, as Ai and Sadako put Hichan to sleep by the warm fire, Ai somberly invites Sadako on a walk with her. She thanks Sadako for helping her to do everything she ever wanted, and that she's ready to give Sadako what she wants, knowing full well what it is by now. Sadako replies by saying that she can record their week together on a tape so that they'll always be together, which probably isn't possible, but she'll try her best. The last words uttered by Ai-chan are, "I love you, Sada-chan," as the two embrace. The next thing we see is Sadako standing beside the deep asleep looking Ai and Hichan, wondering why, if she had killed the last people on Earth, why hadn't she disappeared too? Then she realizes, turns to the reader, and crawls through the panel towards you, ending the story. I honestly loved this manga. Moe Sadako is the best thing to come out of the entire horror genre, and I can't be convinced otherwise. I love how she's still evil, wanting to curse all the remaining survivors, but she's a lot more chill about everything else. It's less like, "You're cursed, so fuck you, fuck you, fuck you," and more, "So yeah, you're cursed, wanna play Mario Kart?" I love how she communicates with the tablet when she has it and uses awkward bashful hand gestures when she doesn't. It's almost as if Komi from Komi Can't Communicate got thrown down a well instead of Sadako, and I think it's a really funny and fresh way of presenting the horror icon. I haven't even gone that deep into Sadako's moe characteristics, but I had to mention my favourite of all of them, when Sadako refers to Okiku as senpai. Who knows, maybe I've watched too much anime, but I thought that was the cutest goddamn thing. I appreciate how, even though it's a cute story about a not usually cute character, it still managed to evoke emotions from me and make me feel for a character that I had never had emotions of that type towards before. Sadako is humanized in a way that not even Ring Zero, the prequel movie, managed. I also think she was used as a subtle tool for drawing out deeper meanings from the story, more than I could have ever predicted before reading. The main one of which is the theme of acceptance in the face of impending finality, and it's surprisingly well implemented and meshes really well with the tones of horror and wholesomeness. Each one of the characters is originally holding on to this world for one last specific moment. The beautician who just wants to see the smiling face of his customers once again, the old woman who needed closure in her dying days, the trapped spirit who longed to be freed, the two girls who just wanted to experience blissfully ignorant fun for a short while in a time of such misery and desperation, and finally the lonely spirit who had never been treated kindly and only wanted to end her loneliness in the only way she knew how. Actually, I wouldn't even say they're holding on to life. It's more like as soon as a more immediate form of finality comes along in the form of Sadako, they accept their fate, even if it is cutting their life short, since they'd probably rather leave this world in a fleeting moment of happiness instead of years of miserable decay. Sadako at the End of the World is a short manga, but I can tell it was crafted with a lot of love for the character of Sadako. There's even a bonus section at the end where the author details her visit to the set of Sadako 2019, which I didn't even know had been released until after reading this. I guess I know what I'm doing after making this video then. If you've made it this far into the video, then I've most definitely spoiled most of the story, but I tried to leave some things unmentioned just in case anyone decides to read it for themselves, which I still recommend you do. I'd like this manga to be supported as much as possible so that the author may consider creating more Sadako-centric stories in the future, or hell, maybe even some Kayako-centric stuff, who knows. I'm aware of another one-off Sadako manga unrelated to the Ring manga series, so if you'd like I can review that too, just let me know. Thanks for watching.